Hi, welcome to Table Talk, and I'm your host, Karen Wilson. Thank you for joining us today. Autism, or Autism Spectrum Disorder, ASD, refers to a broad range of conditions characterized by challenges with social skills, repetitive behaviors, speech, and nonverbal communication. According to the Centers for Disease Control, autism affects an estimated 1 in 36 children and 1 in 45 in the U.S. today. My guest is Jennifer Flatt Meredith, who is the mother of Lucas and Logan, who was diagnosed with autism at 4 years old. Welcome to the show, Jennifer.
Thank you, Karen.
You do a wonderful job with your boys. But tell us, I guess, having twins, I can't imagine. That's a tough job as it is for any mother. But tell us about your family's journey, starting with your pregnancy and their birth and kind of what led to their diagnosis.
Well, like you said, any kind of pregnancy, especially like multiple pregnancies, usually you have that risk of if you're high risk or whatever. And I ended up early on finding out I was having twins. And then because of the way I was carrying them, they could be possibly high risk because they're actually identical. And so it meant I was carrying them in the same sack and but two different placentas. But then they were worried at the beginning, like they could be that twin to twin syndrome. One can grow more than the other. So through my pregnancy, I had a lot of ultrasounds checking on them, and it was like every couple of weeks, like more than a normal person, to check to see if they make sure they're growing and developing great. So that was definitely unusual. But they were also my first, so it was fun to see them grow and everything every couple of weeks.
Twins are exciting.
And it was very exciting. And then as I went along, I actually went into labor and had them at 30. They were 33 weeks old. They both were over 6 pounds, so they were big. They were normal sized babies. And then they were in the NICU for about 36 days. Now, I was never prepared for what that meant. I was never prepared for what it was to be like to be a parent and somebody in the NICU, being my first children too. But never. It was always like, well, this is normal. This is what's normal with twins. This is what a normal pregnancy looks like with twins. They're usually delivered early. This is what's normal. So I went into it with, this is what's normal. Like this is
no amnio or anything.
No.
And would an amnio even pick up on? Wouldn't think it would on autism.
Not with not with that, unless there's a genetic, just a genetic mutation kind of thing. So anyway, there was not really anything. I mean, there was you are going to have children that are born early. There might be some delays, but that's normal. They're twins. We see it all the time.
Right.
They're normal. Right. It was normal for twins to be in a NICU. It was normal for, the only thing that not normal was that I had 6-pound twins at 33 weeks. And they were like, well, wow, they're really big boys to be in a NICU, because most of the time children at 33 weeks are 2 or 3 pounds or maybe 1 pound, so, not having
that was the only atypical thing.
That was the only atypical thing. And so it was just like, okay, this is what's normal. This is what's standard. And I didn't understand at the time. They're like, oh, you have big boys, or, oh, you have strong boys at 6 pounds. And I'm like,
well, that's good.
That's good. Yeah,
that's good.
Okay, but then there was other, but then I had boys. And then I didn't know at the time that, boys don't develop as quickly as girls and struggle a little bit more. That's just shown through science and stuff. And I didn't realize that might mean they were in the hospital longer. I would watch a girl come in and be the same, age, born at the same time, and she might got to leave in 2 weeks, and just things like that.
Lungs, I think, develop slower in boys. I kind of went through the same thing with my son. He was going to come a little early, and they were like, no, and I thought, well, my girls were born at this time. That's perfectly
and that's
fine.
Perfect, yeah.
But not so with a boy.
Yeah. So that kind of started our journey. early on. And then once they were born, and we got out of the NICU, we struggled with some of those things that just, learning how to, those early developmental things, suck, swallow, breathe that they always talk about, or holding their body temperature. And I think, people don't understand that has to do with the last stages of development when you're pregnant.
Okay.
So that's why you really want to get to, full term so your baby knows how to do all those things. So we had a little bit of that, but they got out, like I said, in 36 days, and we didn't have to go back, which was awesome. It wasn't until they were more like, we were going to pediatrician visits, and they'd be like, well, they're behind on maybe 3 months, maybe crawling, or, not crawling at 3 months, but behind at the 3-month mark,
Right.
or behind at the 6-month mark. Have you seen them crawling at all at 6 months? And I'm like, no. And it'd be like, okay, well, that's normal. That's
Right.
normal. They're twins. They're born early. That's normal. And I'd be like, okay. So I just kept getting think it's normal.
Right.
And then later on, as they turned, 9 months, they did hit those milestones, but they were just a lot further behind. And then the same thing with walking. We went to our 1-year visit. Have they started walking? Have they started moving? Have they tried or anything? And I'd
Right.
be like,
Pulling up.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, crawling really fast, but just different things like that. And every time he did that, every time we went, they'd be like, oh, it's okay, it's normal, like it's normal, it's fine. And by the time they were 3, my mom and some other friends of mine, which these are my first children, so I just kept thinking, this is normal, they're twins, this is
They're
normal,
gonna be
that's
a
what
little
the
behind,
that's what
right.
the pediatrician keeps telling me. And they started kind of saying, I think you might want to start questioning, like just ask for a little bit more, because they are a little bit behind on their speech. That was definitely the big thing. They're not talking, and normally by 3, I mean,
Yeah.
they're talking a lot, and we've only got a very few words, And so that is what started me pushing back, and I got a lot of still resistance from pediatrician. Oh, it's normal. And I just thought, well, it's not normal. Like something else is going on.
You're leaning on them to be the expert, and as a new mother, you're kind of, leaning on them
Yeah.
to guide you. But at what point do you kind of, like you said, push back and push a little harder?
Push a little further. So we did, and then that's what got us into. He referred us to a developmental pediatrician in Nashville out of Vanderbilt, and he said, I've had very little training. We get only like a day in med school over developmental disorders or autism, or that it's even looked at. And he said, so we'll push you to a developmental pediatrician. And I did not know that process, just like any specialty doctor, takes months to get in. And so for that, they were 3, and then they didn't get in until they were almost 4. So, I mean, it took almost 18 months for us to get into that kind of.
And the paperwork, I've heard, is unreal.
Yes, we had a lot of paperwork. There was a lot of family
Testing.
history. When we went to that appointment, I had 2 separate appointments because I have 2 boys. So, one was focused on, what exactly can he do? What is that? What does your day look like? What's your family history? What's all your medical history? I mean, everything about me, everything went from hospitals, and they really started digging into it. And then they just kind of watched them in a social reaction and had them do some different things and did little testing things. And it wasn't very long, maybe 45 minutes in a room, where they observed them in different times and then said, okay, we'll get back with you with our analysis. So, and it was about maybe a month later, maybe a little sooner than that, they called and they said, we'd like you to come in. We want to talk to you about what we've decided. And they both said, yes, we believe they both have autism. And then here's you a folder with some information.
Boy, that's got to be extremely overwhelming. You talk about being unprepared for that. Tell us, I guess, how autism presents with Lucas and Logan, and how it's changed as they age, because we talk about it's a spectrum, which means it presents very differently in all children.
It does, and I think one of the greatest, like one of my friends who's in the is a school psych and a special education world, they've always been taught, when you meet one child with autism, you've met one child, because it is a spectrum. They're all different. They all have different, but almost all of them, their social interactions are not quite the same. Maybe their behaviors or how they act in a situation is not what we consider neurotypical or normal. So with my boys, they're very active. They love to run. They love to jump. They love crash into things. They are very high energy. They love all that stuff. They love outdoors. That's their favorite thing. Swimming, biking, hiking, all that kind of stuff. Anything physical exertion. And so that's something that I have to also incorporate because they love that kind of thing. But somebody might not, that's something that it's just kind of interesting. That's something, but then at the same time, they don't like to go to like even a church service can be overwhelming, or an event with a bunch of people. Even the school gym can be overwhelming to them or overstimulating. And I don't know still to this day, well, what exactly bothers you in that situation, but it could be for them that we walk into that room and if they're uncomfortable, they might run. Or it's
That's
just
kind of when you may see a meltdown, as they say, in the child or something. You think, wow. And I have been so guilty of seeing the child in Walmart or at a public event and go, boy, they need to be disciplined,
Yeah.
Not because I will say, an autistic child generally looks like you or I. There's no, with Down syndrome children, you can see that there's a difference, but we don't know that they're autistic. So we have to have some grace, I guess, when talking to people.
And that's very true, because if you see my boys, they're going to be 10 this year. So if you see them, I mean, people talk to them all the time, and they'll say something to them like, what grade are you in? Or, something about, or you have plans this summer, and it's like you would ask a 10-year-old, and they might kind of smile, look at you, and kind of look away, and they're not going to answer you appropriately. Or Logan might say, my name is Logan, and you're like, well, hi, Logan, but he's not going to have that conversation that you can have that back and forth, and he understands you, but it's not the same kind of thing. And I think as that is really hard as they are getting older, is people's perception of they look like normal children at that age, and then they don't understand that maybe they're behind developmentally where they're at, or maybe they look like a 10-year-old, but they're really more on a state of a 4 or 5-year-old, and of where they're at. And I think with them, it's the gap is widening for
between them
and their peers,
right,
and their peers very much, and where what their normal peers are doing, and the things that we do are sometimes are very different, and are just. But I think as I'm seeing them getting older, that's one of the things that's.
Well, and I would think too. You said they're getting close to 10, or they're 10. You've got, of course, their medicines that they take, but they're also on the cusp of hormonal changes that are going to be. So you're probably looking at quite a few changes in the next 5 years in how they process things. I know. It's so, because they go through the same body changes that a regular pubescent child will go through, and explaining that, and the difference in how it affects them mentally, I'm sure is a big challenge. Also, I guess tell us, how disabilities affect, we cannot fully understand, I guess, how disabilities affect a family, how you cope with the challenges as a family.
I think honestly, one of my friends and I were talking, and I said, she said, you explained an analogy to me, because she's like, I have they call them neurotypical children, so children that don't have any neurological disabilities or of any sort, like autism. So a normal child, but they say neurotypical. She's like, I have neurotypical children. So what is it like? I can sympathize with you, but might not empathize with you because I don't live in your world. And I think there's a poem written by Emily Kingsley, and it's called Welcome to Holland. And it's a really great poem about, like, you're so excited to have a baby, and you do it like you're going to a trip to Italy. And so you prepare, you learn the language, and you look out and you map out exactly where you go. And you want to go to Venice, and you want to go see the Colosseum, and you want to, go to Florence. And then you plan everything accordingly, you pack accordingly, and you get on the plane, and you get off the plane, and you're in Holland. And you're like, I'm not supposed to be in Holland. And you're
Uh-huh.
like, but welcome to Holland.
Uh-huh.
And you're
Here
like,
you are.
no, I want to go to Italy because everybody I know is talking about Italy. Everybody's been to Italy. Everybody talks about Italy, and I'm in Holland. And they're like, so then you get off the plane and you got to learn a new language and you got to figure out where you're going. And you got to, you don't know anything about that culture, and it's a completely different thing. And you still see everybody else talking about going to Italy.
Mm-hmm.
And there's that certain point of grief because you didn't get to go to Italy, but at the same time you are still in a beautiful place. You're just in a different place, and you've got to learn how to navigate that place, and you might need more support, or it's a slower place, but Holland's still beautiful. Holland has tulips, and Holland has windmills, and those kind of things, but you weren't prepared.
Right.
You
right.
weren't prepared to be in Holland.
And it's hard to learn everything, so quickly. I mean, your child is changing too as you progress through their ages and things like that.
And I think it's interesting, and like a lot of people, and then I'm like, my analogy is then you don't get to leave Holland. You don't actually get to go to Italy. You also you're there, and you just have to figure it out as you go in a way. And it's just a different thing. And so I think a lot of times with people who have children with disabilities, it's not their expectation. It's not anything that they ever thought would happen to them or whatever. But it's you learn and you grow. And I think with us coping with it is I mean, there's good days and there's bad days. But just like that, I kind of have to have the mindset of our life looks different than what somebody else looks that got to go to Italy. But that's okay because Holland is beautiful too, and it's just a different perspective.
Right. And you also have a daughter who is neurotypical, as you said.
Yes.
So tell us, I guess, about how she copes with having siblings with autism and how that affects her.
I think so. Elizabeth is 5, and so she doesn't know her brothers any differently. She has been, but I mean, she's seen that maybe like the way that they might have a meltdown and their behavior is not how she needs to react.
Right.
There's a different level of discipline between maybe. Well, why does brother get away with it? Why does he get? And it's not then get away with it. Maybe it's he doesn't understand, or. And just how we have to handle things. So for her, and then she also deals with maybe some things that other families are doing. Like right now, she wants to go to Disney so bad. And I'm like, honey, I just can't take just you to Disney. I would have to take the boys. But then if I take the boys, I have to plan out. I got to have almost a 1-to-1 ratio. Like I've got to have enough people with me and then be ready at any moment. If they have a meltdown or they get overwhelmed or...
As they probably would.
As they would with a lot of people. And I think they would really enjoy it. But there's a whole nother level. Like those Disney planners, there's a whole nother level for people who have kids with children with disability or autism or anything that have to think about trying to take a trip like that.
Oh, yeah.
And just you have to be ready in any situation that like if they decide, I'm done. Even if that was your plan, even if that was your money spent, whatever. Okay, you've got to
go
be
back. I know. I have done that. We were talking about my niece who is autistic before, and I have planned this, wonderful activities and things like that, and we'll get there, and it's like, no, I don't want to do this, and you think, but I worked so hard to get this. You're going to have so much fun, but you can't. There's no changing that usually. There's no convincing.
And I have dealt, and I think most would, just because you've got your hopes up, you've got your built up, what you want to do, and then it's like crashes. Like there's been times that I've planned something for us to do, and I'm so excited about it, and then we do have a meltdown, and I'm like, I just have to leave. Like I just have to be okay that even though it's okay. This is not the right environment for them. Something is bothering them. We've got to move on. Or with my boys, because they are very sensory seeking, which is all the jumping and sensory kind of thing, outdoor play. That also comes with sometimes they don't realize the regulation of they need water or they need food, and so they could get right now they could ride their bike straight for 3 hours and not realize, hey, I'm really thirsty or I'm really hungry, and all of a sudden they stop the bike and it's like, oh, we're gonna have a meltdown because
because they are thirsty,
yes,
hungry,
and stuff like that. And so for me, it's also coping with it and preparing, like, okay, hey, I need to stop him and, and say, hey, why don't you drink some water, or here's you a snack, so we can kind of avoid some of those situations. But it's always being prepared for that kind of thing and realizing that, and not just like a normal kid that might just be like, I'm hungry, and then they realize they're going to be patient. You might have a child that's not,
right,
and has that meltdown.
Well, and I would think, going back to the siblings and for parents too, it's probably a good idea to have resources such as therapy or counseling on how to deal with that situation appropriately, because it's hard on a sibling to always have to be giving in to the child with autism or the disability. But there's so many rewards that come with it, but they may not be quite mature enough to understand those rewards yet. So it seems like, I guess, something that's very concerning is that there's fewer opportunities for socialization for autistic children in rural America, along with just fewer resources in general. How do you deal with that, and what are some improvements, that you feel we could do as a town, as a county, that would provide more for children?
I think just the education piece is really what we needed. I think it is hard in rural. We don't have the services that we've needed between speech OT, physical therapy, ABA therapy, have all been in bigger cities. So that's Murfreesboro, Nashville, even Chattanooga, and those. It's not always possible in rural towns for you to make that trip, 45 minutes to an hour or whatever. So more education and more opportunities open. But then there's also that whole gap of insurance. It's very, very, very expensive. And a lot of insurance companies don't cover all the services that you need. And so then when you live in a rural area, I'm very grateful and thankful that we have a great special education system here in Warren County. We have some great OTs and PTs and speech therapists that work in our county schools, so they still can get that in the school system for free. And that is great for us. That is a very big blessing that we actually have in Warren County. And not every county is that special to have that.
Something, I guess, that brings this to mind, of course, April is Autism Awareness Month, but so many people have been mesmerized by the Netflix show Love on the Spectrum, which shows young autistic young adults trying to navigate finding love. Do shows like that help give you hope, I guess, for your boy's future?
I haven't seen that show, but honestly, because I kind of said I'm not going to really watch it as much, but I will say the awareness is out there, and that's very helpful. I think shows like The Good Doctor, which he portrays an autistic doctor, in the way that the show portrays like his thought process, maybe how he's thinking, but maybe how he doesn't react socially correctly, what we think is correct.
Right.
I think those shows and stuff like that do give us hope, but also just the awareness that there are people that think and look, act differently than we do, and that's okay.
Right.
And and we just need to embrace them and not shun them because they are brilliant doctors, or they are. I mean, some of the people that I know with autism, they are some of the smartest minds I have ever met in my life. And it's really interesting. But then sometimes it's, maybe they're just little, have a little different way of thinking. And they're social. They can't sit here and have a conversation like we are, but it doesn't mean that they don't care. It doesn't mean that, they have that kind of thing. So, and I think the Love on the Spectrum, I've had somebody say, you should really watch that. And I just kind of was like, I hadn't really decided, but I think, yes, those kind of things are.
It is. I would encourage you to, because it warms my heart. I've even shed a few tears and stuff in it, because you just fall in love with the kids, and you have a new appreciation of what adult living looks like to them, and what they want to achieve in their adult lives, and so it's very good. What do you feel, I guess, is important to share with those who know and understand very little about autism?
Well, I think the biggest thing is don't be quick to judge. Like you said, you think it's like, especially being part of the South, they're not being disciplined. Now, yes, we have kids that are not disciplined, right? But at the same time, it might not be a child that's that. I mean, I've had several instances where I have had glares from other women, or staring looks, and it's already, as a child with autism, as a parent, you're already super hyper focused into everything around you, right? So anybody's looks or anybody things can make a person feel a certain way. And when you have a child that's not behaving the appropriate behavior at a ball field or in the grocery checkout line, or wherever you, or at a street fair, I mean, whatever it is that they're trying to do, you also need to remember that there might be more. And especially now that the awareness is up, and now that it's like 1 in 36 children couldn't have autism or a neurological disorder, and it's on the spectrum, that's so many more than it used to be. And I just think I really said, don't be quick to judge, be kind, teach your children to be kind, and teach your children that it's important to, no matter what the disability is, to just love people.
And you are so blessed to have a family that is so supportive and helpful. How just speak to the audience, I guess, and how important that is.
I have to have my support team for sure. So not only is there, my mom and dad are great, but just in my family, but just to have the people who know and appreciate my boys and understand that. But I consider my support team, even the school system, like the special ed teachers and the aides that work with them every day. And but it's very important, because the most time for me, if I'm going to plan any kind of trip, like we started talking already about summer plans, and I was like, oh, I have to be in Sevierville for a few days. Maybe that'd be cool to try to take the kids to Dollywood. But that kind of thing, that's overwhelming for a parent to plan alone. But then if you think about having a child with some autism or something you don't know how, you've never been, how is everything going to affect them? We were talking about, I actually told earlier my sister, I said, I have to have a 1-to-1 ratio, like with the boys. I mean, and so I actually need 3 parents, like all 3 of my kids. I need 3 of me, really.
Yeah.
So I need somebody who understands that, and that support is huge for you to be able to be, I feel like for me to be able to be successful when you have children who are runners, or children who don't, because they're runners because they don't quite understand safety.
Well,
they might see that road out there, but it's not going to hit them, that's unsafe to run. Yeah, hurtful.
Them.
And there's things like that. So so yes, that's a whole support team is huge, and I'm thankful for, and it does feel very isolating if you don't have a great family resource, and parents are exhausted and beat down. But then that's why, like, McMinnville Special Games and reaching out to some of, meeting some people, and that might not have the same thing, but they understand that your world and my world look different than somebody typical.
Yeah,
so yeah.
Well, thank you so much
Yeah,
for
thank
sharing this about, I know we have probably a not any larger than average autistic community, but rural America needs more resources, and we need more help with this type thing, helping parents cope and having the kids, with resources and things like that. And I want to say thank you to our audience for joining us today. We hope you found this show helpful, and wish you a safe and happy week. Join us again next week for more Table Talk.